So I was a stay-at-home dad for the first probably 2 years of my oldest son's life. And Gina and I decided that I was going to start my own business, and she was working full-time as an occupational therapist. We made the decision that I would stay home with Harrison. And so I took on a lot of the duties of of a parent, of a father, but I did things like we did the shopping, I did a lot of the house cleaning, a lot of things that aren't usually attributed to fathers. And for instance, like our typical Friday morning was spent shopping. We'd go down to the Bilo, and we uh, we would go through the different departments, and Harrison would help me out picking out things. And one of the things that I did, we got his book, show you a picture of it, about how are you peeling? And what it did, the author of the book took different vegetables and fruits, and he made different kinds of faces with them that are dealing with feeling. And so I would take the book with us going shopping. And as we went through the produce department, we would open the book up and I would pick out different vegetables or fruits, and I would ask my son to help me find them. And now he was still sitting in the cart. He was really young, but we would slowly go past each of the produce area, and he would find it, get all excited over finding that, and I'd make a puppet out of some of the vegetables too. Um, and then to get him laughing, what I would do is we'd buy some of the produce, some of the different vegetables or whatever, and they have those little plastic bags you put the stuff in. Well, I had to open it up, so I just would make a puppet out of the plastic bag and get him giggling and laughing, and we just had a great time. They got to know us at the Bilo because we went there every Friday. It was very, very much routine. And the produce manager knew us and would come over and talk to us. And I think even sometimes offered Harrison something like a piece of fruit or something to try out. Um, the lady at checkout was Gladys, and Harrison looked forward to seeing Gladys. If hopefully she was there just about every Friday, but if she wouldn't, he'd be really disappointed that he couldn't see Gladys. And she would talk to us, and she got to know us. It was a really kind of a fun adventure for us while at the same time, we were doing a household chore, really, of going shopping. Yeah. I love those pictures. We like I said, we would make puppets out of the vegetables too, and we'd do little scenes and stuff like that as we went through it. So it so I took on roles that, like I said, that a lot of fathers aren't recognized for, roles of cleaning and cooking, and I still to this day do a lot of cooking, and it's something that I'm happy to do because we, Gina and I think, are very much partners in what we do in raising our kids. Um, but yeah, so how are you feeling about what you're doing as a parent, either as a father or a mother? You know, are you getting recognized for the things that you do?
Hello,
This is Don.
and this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family. This is podcast number 128. Today we're talking about invisible labor. So I love the story, Don, you've told over the years of going grocery shopping with Harrison, and you made it was fun. You've always found ways to engage with our kids from the time they were babies that were things that dad could do. I breastfed my kids and I was very much into attachment parenting and using slings and being there as mom and being supportive, and you found ways that you bonded with them, from changing their diaper. You've talked about that before,
Yeah, that was
making those
always,
special times. And so here, you were stepping up because you knew we had made this plan of you being a stay-at-home dad before I was even pregnant. And then I had this baby, and I was like, I don't want to go back to work. I got to
yeah,
go back to work full time. You were just starting the business, had no
yeah.
income yet. And so you did things like make my lunch and did the grocery shopping and house cleaning so that when I was home from work, I could spend time with him, and which is very much appreciated. And I
Well,
love that you took him to the grocery store with you, but it was also a fun little experience.
well, learning too, I think, in a way, because we learned colors, we learned the different types of vet. I mean, he was one because I remember you telling the story about going to the farmer's market, and the lady asked like,
We were at a
I
farmer's
think we talked
market.
about that before.
Yeah, and it was a zucchini, and
He could even spell it, I think.
she said, "Do you know what color this is?" And he just I could tell he had that look on his face like, "It's green, lady. Why don't you know that?" And and
Yeah. So yeah, it was yeah, like I said, and we're talking about, the invisible labor and that we don't always get recognized for. And I was reading uh like about the definition of invisible labor, and they talk about two-thirds of women take on that role that isn't recognized, housework, cooking, any of that things that we do that are really a job, but they don't get really recognized the way they need to. That time I spent doing that, um, that was a job. Like, you remember we talked, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but that first day that I was home and you went to work
he
after you,
was 12 weeks old. I had a 12-week maternity leave.
and you came home and I was sitting in a chair. I can still picture myself sitting in a chair, and you walked in and I said, I haven't even gotten a shower today. It was exhausting, and it was a lot of work. And parents do that all the time without getting, we don't get paid for it, and we don't get recognized for it.
Just all the little and how much energy it takes to just take care of a 3-month-old baby and
Yeah.
changing him and feeding him. And he didn't like bottles.
No, no,
Um, and but also you took the time to make things fun, going to the grocery store. You took that extra time and used it as a bonding experience with him, in addition to getting the shopping done. And we made that choice when we chose to juggle our schedules so that one of us was home with our kids for the most part. We chose to live on less income. We chose to not go move into a bigger house. We lived in a 1,200 square foot house, and we chose those things so that we'd have more time with our kids. And you can still, no matter how busy your life is, finding times because
different ways to bond too.
did you really spend, if you would just gone to the grocery store without, I mean, you had to take the kid with you no matter what, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So if you have to take your kid to the grocery store no matter what, you know, is it really taking extra time to make it a fun experience? Because what happens if it's just you rushing, you
Hmm.
being in a hurry, got to get this done, and then they're getting into things and you wind up spending more time and
Oh yeah.
energy. Um, even if maybe it takes 15 minutes more to do it this way and have fun, you're exhausted at the end versus like you looked forward to going grocery
Yeah, that
shopping
was
with him.
fun.
And he was the kind of kid that would sit in the cart and engage with you,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, then when I went shopping with the third child and
It was a very different
they're running over
experience.
the store and
Yeah.
yeah. So kids are all different. And yet, he was pretty small when you started doing this.
Oh yeah. No, he was
Um,
still, like I said, being breastfed, and I tried to give him the bottle. Well, and the nice part about it, you worked close at that
couple
time,
miles away,
so
yeah.
we were able to run down sometimes and do have take him there to feed him and things like that, which was that was not it was we really, I think, worked it really well,
Mhm.
for what we did. Um, I was thinking of, as you're talking about, when I used to do the Cheerios, because I was concerned about his protein. So I used to stuff the I take scrambled eggs and stuff them in Cheerios, and he would circle. He would our kitchen and our family room, and then the TV was like straight across, and he'd sit there and watch, I don't know, Teletubbies or one of them, and he'd circle over, grab a Cheerio, stuff it in his mouth, go back over and watch for a little bit. That's how I used to have to feed him.
He wasn't a big sit down eating a
No,
lot of food, or he
no.
was particular about what he did eat. And so that was one way to get protein in. That was totally your idea.
Yeah.
There's a
Talk
lot.
about invisible labor. That was the labor of love there, but taking stuffing each one and not, and he didn't really recognize that that was the because he didn't, I don't think he liked really eggs that much, just sitting down eating them. But anyway, that was just a little
Right.
story.
So we came on here to talk about invisible labor and, talking about ways that you can incorporate fun in these routines, in these activities that someone's got to do. Someone's got to go buy groceries. Someone's got to go buy food. Someone's got to prepare the food. Someone's got to do the other errands that need to be done. Now there's a lot of ordering, a lot of online shopping and things, but there are still other outings that,
Well,
we
and I
we need
think
to do at times.
it doesn't hurt to get out of the house. You can use those online deliveries and things like that, but getting out just because, well, one, and you know this too, is it's very you don't have adult talk,
It's isolating being
it's
home all
isolated.
day with
That's
the
the word I was
child.
looking for. Yeah. And so it's important to get out and not count on everything being, we have such a world now of everything being delivered to us, and it takes away from the getting out of the house and
Well, and
that
things were
isolation.
Harrison was born in 1997. So things
Yeah,
were very
that's
different in the
26
late
years.
90s as far as, what services were even available and things. But yeah, you did you took him to story time at the library. You joined the moms group that met once a week at the library, and then
Oh,
they
yes, I did.
they did other things. And, because taking care of a young child, yeah, you don't have the opportunities. And when you do an activity with other parents, you're so busy taking care of this child. Their needs are so great that you don't get a whole lot of interaction time with other people. And how do our kids learn about things like going to the grocery store and interacting with other people? That's like the beauty of us homeschooling is they were there. They were there when the service people came to the house. When you go to the grocery store, you talk about incorporating learning. It's not anything you had to do. Just going to the grocery store and like, I need some apples and, just talking to your kid as you're going. You don't have to, be as elaborate as taking the How Are You Peeling book. Whoops, it's upside down with you. And the book is by Saxton Freeman and Joost Elfers. And I apologize because I probably messed up their names, but we can share that. We want to
I'll
give
put a link
credits
on
to
it.
this amazing author and illustrator of this really fun book. Um,
Well, now we venture forward to where we are now.
so yeah, even when your kids are older, right? There are so many, and there can be more. Okay, so we've got a kid entering high school. We've never put our kids in public school. And so we're having to navigate this journey of signing up for classes and 504 plans and contacting people and waiting to hear back from people and phone calls and text messages and emails. And I'm juggling my dad going from rehab back to assisted living where he lives. And there's just so
Well,
many little steps that need to be taken. And if they're not, then things will not go the way they need to do.
in this art, in fact, I need to probably pull the article up, but
While you're pulling the article up, Don, so once again, we're going to quote Zen Parenting Radio and Kathy Cassini Adams, who does these weekly, what does she call them? Zen Parenting Moments. And she talked about, and in their podcast, they talked about invisible labor. And she defines it as, if the school calls, who typically takes care of that phone call, who plans and shops for meals, keeps track of the kids' schedules and doctor's appointments, the cleaning and maintenance of the house, providing the emotional care, is noticing when kids are overwhelmed, caring for elderly parents, maintaining an attitude around the house. So, thinking about these different, what they call invisible, as in, this is labor. This takes time. It takes energy. Sometimes it takes physical, um, and or cognitive abilities, and it's just gets lumped into, oh, you just take, you're in charge of the kids or the house, and there's, um, like you can see house being cleaned, food being cooked, but managing schedules and those other kinds of things are, even more invisible in that.
Little crises that come up, um, like the a couple months ago when the water heater spurt, and and you had to deal with it because then we turned the water off, and then you had to figure out what to, So yeah, there's a lot. Well, and they talk about it. Like I said, this article I found, it's from Optimum, is the name of the Optum optum.com. Uh, 5 things to know about invisible labor, and they talk about caregivers in here. Being an active caregiver is profoundly important to men's health. Men can actually benefit from being more involved in household work. There's research from Harvard that is the longest uh, study on men's health. They allowed 700 men starting as teenagers for more than 75 years and found that the most important thing is the quality of your relationship. Um, anyway, so they talk about caregivers, and I think to me, it expands. They expand more on healthcare workers too. The complexity of what they get paid, but there's so much that they're doing that they don't get paid enough for, And I think you're dealing as the caregiver for your father, and it's not something you get paid for. In fact, sometimes you end up losing some of your pay because you're taking time off to handle a situation with your dad. So those are those invisible uh, labor factors that just um, don't get any credit.
And so it's about recognizing that. It's about paying attention and also, whether you're running your household solo or with a partner or with kids, that once they get to be, I mean, you can get kids involved in household jobs from a young age. When they're really young, it often takes twice as long, but it helps them learn doing things. But it makes things run smoother when you're like, okay, who takes care of this? Who takes care of that? Right? In our family, I do the yard work usually, and
Mhm.
because I like doing it. And Don's been doing the meal preparation and the shopping because um, I like to spend money and I don't have a lot of opportunities. And I go to the grocery store and I get all excited and I spend a lot of
A
money
little too excited
on
sometimes.
groceries. And also, I've been the one working, driving into Charlotte to have to work and that taking more time doing that. And for a while, my income has been the primary source of our income and just the time it takes me to do that. And we've divided different things. Before, when you had to keep a checkbook and manage that, I was the one who did that. I like doing those kinds of things. And so dividing up these responsibilities can be helpful. And we need to stop and think about the things that we don't realize that maybe someone is doing. And then typically, very commonly, some of these things fall on women, and men don't realize the amount that goes into it. I remember talking to you years later about that story about when I came home from work after my maternity leave, about, and when the kids were older and I was home with them and you went off, like you couldn't remember really the feeling of what that was like because you were no longer in it. And I'm like, even though you were a stay-at-home dad, you got back into a different routine, and
Yeah.
it's hard to really remember what that felt like in that moment, to experience that. I just wanted to touch on, go ahead.
Well, and for you, it was tougher too because I only had one child. You felt a little disadvantaged in a way, And the fact that you had two kids to take care of it
So
wasn't fair,
I remember
because you,
I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to be home more with my kids. And so after our second child was born, you were working a part-time job or something, and
yeah,
you went off to work, and
I
I
was
was
working in
like,
Circuit City.
wait a minute, I've got two kids. I've got a brand new baby, and I have a 4-year-old, and this is
Yeah.
different. And this is a lot more juggling when you're taking care of
Well,
one person. It's you and that one person. It adds to a whole different experience.
yeah.
Not, and I did enjoy having that time. I did go back to work. I was able to work a lot less hours with her. I was working in home health care, and I went back just like a couple hours a week here and there for a while. Um,
Yeah, but talk about invisible labor. And then think about how it changed again on the third child because the division, you know, one for one-on-one kind of thing changed, which made another complexity to the you know, and I wouldn't change that in the world, but it really was a whole nother complexity that we had to um,
yeah, because when you have two parents and two children, I can take care of this child, you take care of that child.
yes.
And we've had people tell us that after you get past three kids, it kind of doesn't really matter anymore. Three, four, five, although it's hard to imagine having that many. So, talking about kind of an invisible labor, things that go unnoticed, unseen. And Kathy goes on to explain in her Zen parenting moment about cognitive, emotional, and invisible labor. So, she kind of differentiates, cognitive labor she describes as that mental effort that's required to manage and plan and juggle the schedules and keep track of all the different things, right? I am in the middle of this to the nth degree right now. School's starting in a couple days. I still don't have, a schedule, a 504 plan, all these things that need to happen, people I need to contact about it. I've left messages for people dealing with my dad who's at short-term rehab and needs to go back to assisted living. And I've got notebooks and I'm writing things down and just planning all this. And I'm starting a new job and working my old job, and then the grass needs mowed. And heaven forbid we leave clippings on, on the sidewalk. The
Oh yeah.
HOA doesn't like that. And
Oh
so
my.
just keeping up with, all these different things going on. And I do use systems to write things down, but that complexity of keeping the multitasking, just keeping track of multiple things at once. It takes an effort to do that. And
Well, they talk about in here something I think is kind of interesting. That one number four in here is fair play doesn't mean dividing labor 50-50. And I think about that. That's what I think you can naively think um, the perfect parenting partnership would be. But I think it varies depending on like where your strengths are versus where my strengths are, and what duty should I do versus what, you know. So it'd be hard to make it 50-50, I
Well,
think.
and
I
to
don't know.
speak on what you're saying, because that can be an easy argument. I'm no good at cooking and doing the dishes. You're good at that. I'm good at, working in the yard and I'll grill on the grill and stand outside and talk to the
Yeah.
neighbor and drink my beer. So it's more than that. Yes,
Yeah.
we can look at strengths and weaknesses, but we also need to recognize what's involved in things.
Yeah.
Maybe one person takes care of the car and the maintenance and what's involved in keeping up with that and doing that. And the person taking kids to school, keeping up with assignments and homework and schedules, you know, I think it gets us unnoticed how much is involved in all that different
Mhm.
level. Because it would be easy for some, well, I do this and I take care of the car and to be able to come up
Yeah.
with this list of things that, and typically men, right, in our culture, not that it's always true. But easy to when you don't realize what's involved. And sometimes it can be helpful to be like, okay, I'll do these responsibilities for this month, to just understand
Mhm.
what's involved with it. And at the same time, we're different people and we have different other things going on, right? You can't necessarily swap jobs, put yourself in the other person's shoes.
I could be an OT.
Stay-at-home parents, and it's, get this a lot that they the person who goes, well, you don't know what it's like to go to work and you don't know what it's like to,
Mm.
and for a young mom, it's like you get out of the house, and you you get to take a shower. And there's just
Yeah.
so many things that go unrecognized of
Well, and also what it might do, I guess, psychologically, the thought process, how they tell somebody, well, you don't work, what that the psyche to that. I mean, to
well,
me, that would be,
that's a whole
yeah,
nother podcast.
yeah,
Just
that's true.
that's why invisible labor, people say, oh, on your day off, I say, you mean my day without pay? What is a day off? Especially as an occupational therapist and right now helping my dad. I'm like, no, I'm going to work as an OT, take care of my father. I'm not going to get paid for this work, but it
Yeah.
looks very similar to other work I'm doing. Yeah. So, it is labor and it does take time. People say, parenting is a difficult job, and it's more than a job, right? It's a responsibility and it's also a privilege to raise a
Mm.
human being and to watch them grow. And there are the joys and the blessings that come from that are amazing. And the challenges and difficulties are also can be overwhelming,
Yeah.
and more impactful than a job. You can always change jobs, but you don't turn your family in and start over again. If
Yeah.
you do, well, that's a whole nother podcast. Um,
Why it was like that commercial where it's about a cold medicine or something, and the mother looks in the room and the little baby standing in the crib and says, "I'm sorry today, I'm feeling sick and I'm not going to be able to come in," or something like that. That you can't do that as a parent, and I just find it kind of. I thought that was funny. I guess it
the
wasn't.
parent says it. The parent says it to the child.
Yeah, he opens the
I think
door
it's
and
the
looking at the
father
child.
actually. It
It says,
says, yeah,
"Yeah, I can't make it today." Oh, good. You can't do that.
you can't do
Yeah.
that. So just back to Kathy's Zen parenting moment, emotional labor. When we're caring for other people, we have to manage our own emotions as well as that of others and their responses when you're dealing with children and even young adults, right? Our brain is not fully developed with its full executive functioning until the mid to late 20s. Some people never develop full executive functioning. There are full grown adults that are not operating at the highest cognitive level. And when you have other added difficulties and things on top of it, when kids have special needs and learning differences and other factors, anxiety and other things, that adds kind of extra challenges in the mix. And then also when you're dealing with anyone, even if they're fully cognitively intact. So, your parent doesn't have dementia, but they fall and break a hip. Something out of the ordinary happens, that extra stress, that extra burden, and so navigating that. And then of course, obviously with someone with dementia, there's a whole nother level of emotional labor and the toll it takes.
Mm.
Um, and
Yeah, it's difficult for me, and I know it's really even more so for you, but it's difficult for me even though he's my father-in-law. It's still difficult to see him in this place, to have seen him a vibrant, person that was fishing and doing all this neat stuff. And, it was like our vacation home when they owned the place in the lake. And he was always really good because my father died very young. So he kind of helped replace that in a way, in a little bit of way anyway. And so it's hard. So mentally, it's really hard sometimes to watch him go through this. And I don't, just, I don't know where I went
kind
going
of
necessarily.
the emotional toll it's taking on you to
Yeah.
as you're helping support and caregiving for my dad. Yeah, that in itself is a whole nother element talking, about emotional labor. I know I always used to tell you when I would go to work, like you'd go to work and you'd come home and then we were done or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my job is emotionally, physically, and mentally exhausting.
Yeah.
As an occupational therapist, I have to assess and evaluate someone and set goals for them and determine what they need. It takes my brain like a lot to think through those things. It takes a lot for me emotionally. This is a human being and something has happened to them and they've been sick and they have needs and And physically, a lot of times it involves me doing physical labor, whether it's helping move them from the bed to a wheelchair or into the bathroom, standing and helping them keep their balance while also helping them get pants up and down, and not just doing these things for them, but as a therapist, my job is to help facilitate their ability to do these things, giving them the opportunity to let go and see if they are able to, do they have balance good enough to reach and get their pants up. So there's the cognitive component going on of whenever we're doing things. I'm not just taking them to the bathroom. I'm looking at their balance. I'm looking at their coordination and all these things. And so, when I'd come home, I'd be like, these were people like you used to work for Kraft Foods that started out as ice cream sales, and
Friars, yeah.
you said your boss would tell you, Don, it's just ice cream, right?
Oh yeah.
And for me, it's like these are people.
Yeah,
These
that's
are people with real lives, and
yeah.
it's what how I interact with them has a big impact, even if I'm only spending 40 minutes or 60 minutes in a therapy session in a day with them.
Yeah.
Um,
It isn't necessarily life and death, but it's still their life and it's very
it's a quality, it's about
yeah, quality
quality
of
of
life.
their life.
I mean,
And
you are have dealt with people that have passed and that you've worked with and stuff.
and
But
speaking to just kind of invisible labor. So at work, I'm supposed to see people for about 40 minutes. If it's an evaluation, I'm supposed to get it done in like 60 or 65. It used to be 90, but that involves seeing them, seeing what they can do, typing this all up, typing up goals. And you walk into a room and, their call bells across the floor, or it's their phone wires twisted. And so I always joke about, I'm a detangler of cords. I'm really good at this skill. And there's all these other components of things I do. Or, their wheelchair is wide because they're a larger person and it won't fit to get from their bed to the bathroom. And so I'm rearranging the furniture, which is environmental modification. And yet all these other little things that go into what I'm doing, and the bosses, the people in higher up in corporate are saying, why is your product, you need to you need to meet these standards and you need to finish at 40 minutes and get on to the next person. And yet there can be so many other components of things that go into play. It's like, as a therapist, if they want water or things like that, right? That's not typically my job to go do that, but I often do those things because the time it takes to find somebody else to do that. And yet, if you do that for a patient all the time, then they assume that you're going to do all these other little
yeah,
things, and they don't realize that, you know, a full-time therapist might have 12 to 15 people that they've got to see in an 8-hour day and write up all their notes and do their documentation. And yeah, and so there's so much that goes behind the scenes, not only as a healthcare professional working in healthcare, but as a caregiver, as someone, responsible for running a household, wherever you're at, managing family life, even if your kids are all out of the house, just arranging holidays and getting together and different things, that in itself as getting together with
mm,
family, with my extended family, when the kids were all little, we would get together in the summer and at Christmas. And I homeschooled the kids, so we didn't have that kind of worry. But when the kids were little, my brother could just take them out of school a couple days extra early to make the drive from Pennsylvania to South Carolina. And as they've gotten older, and then they go to college on the other side of the country, and just navigating that. So there's usually a person in the family
oh yeah,
who kind of makes sure everyone still gets together and who oversees coordination of those activities.
one you know when my dad was the coordinator, and when he passed, it kind of fell apart because he didn't have my mom wasn't like that. Yeah, so it
Oh, as
just
far as your family gatherings,
yeah. Well, we used plus you had them have their kids and it got very complicated and like I said,
your brothers, because you
uh,
you were 17 when your dad passed, and
yeah,
so most of your brothers and sisters were out of the
yeah.
house, some
So it
with
was really
children of their own
that one
already.
was devastating to me because I was used to they would Sundays they'd be over at the house. They all lived within the town, um, and then like I said, when Dad passed,
Things
unfortunately it was a little bit because I think they didn't find as much. Um, excitement in seeing my mom, I guess.
Well, it
But it was
changed.
just
It changed the
yeah, it changed the
dynamic. It
dynamic big time.
changed it, and yeah, and so yeah, when that just any shift in those kinds of things, it affects it,
Yeah.
and um,
So they bring an interesting point in this article that was about the person who made more money was kind of thought of as to not have to do as much housework. And I've always, you know, been thought about that. Yeah, I didn't come from that kind of household, but of course, I mean, we didn't, my, we were never we were probably like lower middle class family, but my father was very much a partner with my mother. They,
yet he worked like three jobs, so
he worked three
he
jobs, but
wasn't there a lot at the
yeah, well,
house.
yeah, yeah. But when he was, it wasn't like he wouldn't do stuff. It wasn't like, I worked really hard. I'm not gonna, I don't have to get up and do dishes or whatever. He would be right there doing the stuff. So, I think that's something that I think couples deal with a lot is, one feels not superior, but one feels that, they don't have to do it because I'm bringing home the bacon. And that, that never felt right to me. Never, whenever I'd see it in a couple or in a family.
Well, and things can evolve and change, and it's the kind of thing that you need to have conversations about, and also stop and think like, what message are you sending to your kids? And kids pick up on things not only from parents but society. I remember, I think it was when Harrison was little, and somehow we were, playing with little people or talking about jobs. I want to say he said something like, "Well, girls can't be doctors." And here I am, the working parent, you're the stay-at-home dad, and
Yeah.
my kid is, I'm like, what? And I was like outraged. And just these messages that can come across that we don't even realize that, it's like I have therapists in the therapy world. The majority of therapists are female, and our speech therapist is a guy, and people assume he's the boss. They assume he's a doctor, all kinds of things. Get assumed, and we're talking when working with adults and geriatric population, it's even more inherent in their generation, and yet these messages still get passed on and portrayed. They're shown in media situations. They're shown in, that's why it's such a big deal when commercials show dads doing dishes with kids, and to normalize these things,
Mhm.
and yet it's still predominantly women, filling these roles. And, kind of speaking to that, when the dads do it, it's like, oh, look, the dad's doing the dishes. Yay, you're a great dad. How many people say that to a woman?
Yeah.
You're such a great mother. You cooked her dinner and you got her to dance class and you go to work. Like, wow, look at you. But people are saying this
Yeah.
to men and dads. So these are things to think about, and things to, as your kids are older, having conversations around these
Yeah.
things, and, paying attention and stopping, even, if your husband doesn't do things around the house, and thinking about the things he does do, and thinking about the components, right? We need to pay attention to other people's invisible work and ways that they're
Mhm.
doing things as well as our own. And uh,
Well, you can also have a conversation with that person. And we talk about communication and being able to address what your needs are. If that partner is not doing what you believe they should be doing or whatever, talk about it versus, going out, you're not doing this and you're not. No, it's talking about this is what I'm feeling right now, and I was wondering if you could help me out with this area or this area, and being open to know that he or she may not be one to do a certain thing, but they may be willing to do something else. So
and it
being
doesn't
able
have
to,
to be forever.
yeah,
Um,
so it's kind of negotiating, I guess, in a little bit of a ways.
right. Good conversation starter. So this has been a great conversation. Hope you've enjoyed our podcast today. We'd love for you to share this with other people, like this podcast, and know that you can listen to it anywhere you hear podcasts, and you can watch it on YouTube. And be sure to follow us, like us, share the information with other people, check out our other videos or other podcasts that we do, covering a whole variety of topics from parenting our children, our parents, and ourselves, with us focusing more recently on juggling family life, caring for aging loved ones, but also covering other topics of parenting, all aspects of parenting. And check out, few previous podcasts. We covered foster parenting topics and have interviewed some really awesome people in some different areas. So be sure to check that out. If you have other questions about what we do, be sure to go to our Facebook page and learn more about the things we do with Focused Healthy Family. Don does tapping if you're watching us, EFT tapping, and you can learn more about his practice and what he does.
And
When is the
online
next
groups.
online group tapping?
Oh,
He's going to look that up while I keep talking. I do an Ask the OT. Don and I do it together, but about twice a month or more. We're going live online for about a half an hour. It happens on YouTube, and you can come in through Zoom. You can send in questions or join us. The next Ask the OT is Wednesday, August 14th at noon Eastern Time, and we'll be doing another one on Monday, August 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, reach out to us with questions or come in via YouTube for those events to just your questions about caring for aging loved ones, juggling different responsibilities. And I'd love to be there and support you and have conversations, and know that if you need more help, if you want more answers, that's what our consulting work is all about, is supporting you. All this work I've been doing with my dad and my mom and navigating these avenues. I'm working on a pamphlet right now, navigating hospital to rehab to home. And there's just so many little bits of information that I can share with people. And when I can learn about you and your own situation and your loved one, I can help you more directly and more specifically. Um, so go to Focused Healthy Family, follow us on Instagram, on YouTube.
and these are free group sessions online. The next one's August 16th at 12 noon. I have one August 21st at 7:30 and August 24th at 9 a.m. And again, you can find this by going to the focusedhealthyfamily.com
And
website.
you join those on YouTube, Don?
They're not. I'm not putting them out. These are group tappings.
They're private.
They're done through Zoom, but yeah,
Zoom.
they're
They're
not.
private. They won't
I
be
don't
aired.
broadcast them.
So you join in, you find out the information by going to our website, by contacting us to learn more about these things. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.